this meeting is.
Okay, I think that should be good. So, Alyssa, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and giving us a quick events update.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Steele, and as Amanda mentioned, I'm the Director of Events for the South region. I apologize, I'm having some computer trouble, so my camera is not on today, but I'm going to go ahead and give you some updates. So before I go into upcoming events, as many of you know, we are in our spring VisionWalks season. And so far, Atlanta and Arizona are over 100% of their fundraising goals. So congratulations to those two markets. I was at the Atlanta walk this past Sunday, and it was so nice to be back in person with everyone. And so we've had really great attendance at our walks, and it's been really nice just to be with everyone. So we have New York City, the Triangle Vision Walk, Jacksonville, and Orlando are closing in on 100% of their fundraising goals. So there's lots of lots of success across the country, and we're really grateful for everyone's hard work. As far as upcoming events, we do have the Austin Vision Walk, Orange County Vision Walk, Bay Area, Triangle. We have Cleveland coming up, Fort Wayne. So a lot around the corner. So we, again, appreciate all that y'all are working on. Our teams have been really great, and we're just so appreciative of everyone's hard work. As far as special events go, we have the upcoming Shades of Spring dinner in Charlotte, North Carolina on May 12th, with Columbus Dining in the Dark on May 7th, and Twin Cities Crafting Cures on May 16th, and Artistry of Wine in the Midwest in Chicago on June 23rd. Sorry, I'm trying to go by region. It's not really working that well. We also have the Triangle dinner, which will be on June 2nd. And then we also are hosting Night for Sight in New York on May 19th, which will feature ex-ambassadors as the special guests and hosted by Heather Thompson. So I'll be sure to share that information with Amanda for the invitation if you are interested in attending or know anyone in the area that would like to come. On a national level, we do have the Visions Conference, which I'm sure a lot of you have received messaging for. So again, I'll share that information with Amanda, but we do encourage you to get your tickets as soon as possible and to reserve your hotel rooms. But we are really excited for that in June. That will be in Orlando, and I know a lot of staff will be there, and we are very much looking forward to it. So if y'all have any questions about these national events or events in your area, please reach out to the event staff in your market. We're more than happy to get you plugged in and more information.
Great, thanks, Alyssa. And then next, Bailey is going to give a quick update on a fundraiser that I know that we've all heard about. So Bailey?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. So I know that earlier this year, one of our national trustees and dedicated volunteers had brought up a fundraiser to our chapter group, and in a way to help unite all of our chapters in one mission. So the Judy Kale's 50th anniversary fundraiser, I've started to get a few different questions about where different chapters lie within how much fundraising dollars have come in. So I wanted to give a quick update as well as thank everyone who has participated so far. So as of right now, we've had 13 chapters who have participated in one way or another. I want to give a huge shout out to Eric from the Pittsburgh chapter, and thank you. He has decided to match donations up to $2,500 in his market. So thank you for that. I know we've had some great involvement by Martha and Dan and Tom and various chapters all across the nation. And we've had a great turnout so far. But just to give everyone an update, because I know that we've had a few different questions on where people stand with their dollars raised. So right now we have 49 donations that we've received, and we have surpassed the $17,000 mark. So very exciting, and it's all thanks to you all and your hard work and pushing this out to folks in the communities that we've been able to surpass $17,000 thus far, closer to that $50,000 goal. So for Arizona, we have brought in about $53 so far. Atlanta at $79. We have the Boston chapter coming in a little over $1,800. We have 157 from Chicago. We have a little over 2,500 from the DC Metro chapter, 53 from Denver, 52 from New York, 52 from Orange County. We also have 630 from Orlando, and we have 929 from Pittsburgh, 157 from San Diego, and 310 from the Triad. So we have participation all across the nation, which is pretty fantastic. And Judy wanted me to, take a moment today to thank you all for your involvement in this as we're getting ready to close up this fundraiser here at the end of June, and really wanted to share how gracious the support has been from everybody.
Great, thanks, Bailey. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to email us, or Bailey specifically, I know has been working hard on that fundraiser. And then next, I wanted to pass the mic to Lindsay Blankenship, who is our Denver chapter president, who has some updates on a DIY event that's happening out in that area. Lindsay?
Hi there. Nice to see everyone. Yeah, I did my own Dining in the Dark event last Wednesday, and it was such a huge success. And I love to plan events, so that's kind of what I do on the side, but it was really easy to put together. I do have a couple friends who are in charge of a restaurant group, and they own several small foodie kind of restaurants around Denver. So they agreed to host it. And then I have a friend of mine who owns a real estate group, and they work right near there, and they sponsored it. So it was great. The restaurant was amazing. They did a 4-course meal. We charged $50 a plate. And the chef really took the time to make the food feasible for people because the first 20 minutes, people were completely, had no sight. They had a full-on blackout mask on. So as soon as they walked into the restaurant, the manager and the host had them put those on, and they walked them to their table. So they started out pretty disoriented all at the beginning. And then the first course, the chef made it so it was a finger food. So they didn't have to fight with their fork and knife, which was great. And then they created a specialty cocktail that 100% of the proceeds went back to FFB. They gave, I think in the end, it'll be 20% of every meal back to the FFB. And then the sponsor donated $1,000, as some of their teammates also donated on top of that. So I don't have final numbers yet because this just happened, but I will say that I had quite a variety of people there, friends, people from FFB, people who just saw it when they were searching the restaurant. And it was really fun to hear their feedback. So even the staff, I met with the staff 30 in their pre-shift, so 30 minutes before seating had started, and kind of trained them quickly on how to communicate and how to help people who weren't able to see. And you would have thought they had been trained for a month. They were amazing, flawless. So many people complimented them on the way they communicated. And just the impact that the event had. I was telling Julie, my chapter engagement manager, that was almost as wonderful as the money raised, because it was just people, there was just so much awareness and empathy and understanding, not pity, very different. So it was a wonderful event. And these things, I know it can seem daunting and overwhelming, but I mean, most restaurants actually are happy to do things like this. So I encourage you to try it because it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and I will do it again. It'll be a yearly tradition here in Denver for sure.
Hi, Lindsay, this is Nathan. Would it be okay if we
Hi.
shared your email address in the minutes? If anyone else who wanted to maybe do their own DIY dining in the dark, they could pick your brain.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Lindsay. I know that we had heard a little bit about that last month when you weren't able to join. Julie gave us an update. And so it's really nice to hear this follow-up, and congratulations. That's a great job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And so then lastly, just a quick plug for the newest Eye on the Cure podcast. Dan sent this over, Dan Day from Orlando. And I absolutely agree that we should mention this because last month you heard from Claire Gelfman, who is our Chief Scientific Officer, and she spoke on optogenetics. And this latest podcast is on optogenetics. The guest is John Flannery, who is just a huge name in that whole in that whole sector. But Dan, I don't know if you have anything else to say on that or to add.
I'll just comment that I heard John speak earlier this month too out at Investing in the Cures Summit, and that their whole area of optogenetics is fascinating, and it is moving along pretty quickly. So I think this is, all of the Eye on the Cure blogs I think are interesting to listen to, but this one is particularly interesting, at least to me, because there's a lot of good science, and of course optogenetics is one of the gene agnostic approaches and it can work for people who have lost a lot of sight. It really is almost targeted toward people who have little to no vision left. So I think you'll find this blog well worth your time to listen to. Thanks, Amanda.
No problem. And I'll include the link in the meeting minutes so you don't have to write down any sort of link now, but you'll get that in the next day or so. And so then, if no one has anything else, I will pass along to Nathan, who is going to introduce our special guest for today's meeting.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. And as Amanda mentioned, we're going to be shifting into kind of a new format for the rest of just this month's call. We've invited DJ Hampton to join us and talk to us about where we can improve our chapters and what kind of development we need. And DJ is going to join us at Visions on June 16th for a special workshop just for chapter leaders. So not just presidents, but all of our chapter leaders across the country that attend Visions are invited to participate in this workshop. And we've invited DJ today to kind of quiz us and figure out where we could use the help. What chapters need help with different areas, and DJ is going to kind of work us through kind of the pre-workshop work here so that when we show up to Visions, we're ready to go and kind of dive into the workshop. But a little bit about DJ. He is the lead strategist for a company called Turnkey Consulting, and they work with forward-thinking companies like ours to basically shape a thriving future. He's held roles at very large nonprofits, including the United Way, ALS, and other March of Dimes. And DJ and his wife, Allison, and daughters, Madeline and Grayson, currently live in Virginia. And this is a fun fact about DJ. When he's not teaching us or doing workshops or making nonprofits, as efficient as they can be, you can find him riding his Vespa or hiking. So DJ, we'd love to hear about the Vespa, but we'll make sure we save more of the time to kind of dive into kind of jumping into the workshop content and what we can do to help build that with you. So DJ, welcome to our President's Call, and you've got the floor.
Well, thank you so much.
Hey,
go ahead,
DJ,
Judy.
it's Judy. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we should tell about our special guests that we have on today. Scott Burt and Steve Alper are with us. And Scott and Steve both serve as board members and the chair of our grassroots subcommittee. And so they wanted to be part of today's session. So if you see those two on here, that's why they're here. And we're glad to have you. Thank you. Sorry, DJ, take it away.
Never apologize for that. That is wonderful to have you here also. And so I just got to say thank you so much for having me here today. I will warn you, my daughter's daycare was closed yesterday due to a COVID outbreak. She is watching Moana right here. So if you hear the music wafting over, I apologize in advance. But more importantly, if my assistant makes a showing, I will gently feed her some goldfish and send her back on her way. So please forgive me if she decides to make an appearance here today. But I'm very excited to be sharing a little bit. What I'd love to do is set the table. Would love to answer some questions that you have. And then I actually would love to get some direct feedback from you in a way that will help us shape the session when we're at Vision, if that works for everyone. Does that sound like an okay agenda? Okay, and one thing I do want to share is that I have purposely designed these slides to have a bare minimum of content on them, and that anything that is on a slide, I will make sure that I read out loud, and that way everyone can participate equally. So with that, let me just see, are you seeing my slides advance here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you should see a slide that says our agenda. First, I mentioned we're going to set the table. Second, I'm going to answer some questions. Third, I'm going to do a call to action. We need your help. And then four, we'll talk a little bit about next steps. And so with that, I would love to just ask this group, and for those of you who have heard me say these three before, please refrain from answering. But for the chapter presidents, I would love to ask, please feel free to unmute yourself and raise your hand and share. There's only three ways you can grow revenue. And so I'm going to ask, does anyone know what any of those three ways that you can grow revenue are? I've got my Brady Bunch view open here. Any volunteers want to unmute themselves and share one way you can grow revenue?
Your new events.
You can do new events, and the way new events drive revenue is you get new donors. And so that's one, is to recruit new people to support your cause and engage them in a new way. What else? How else can you grow revenue? You got new donors. What are the other two levers?
DIY fundraisers.
DIY fundraisers is a mechanism to get it, and you would involve donors, either new donors or existing donors to do that. But by and of itself, it's a mechanism to raise more money, not necessarily one of the levers you can pull.
Hey, DJ, Eva Fairchild, our Dallas president, has her hand up.
Okay, yes, hello.
Hi, would it be applying for grants and funding through government opportunities?
Grants is a good one. I would put that in the get new donor bucket. And when I say donors, it could be companies, could be individuals, could be corporations and foundations, or government grants. So I would call that new. Any other last shots or guesses before I give all three away?
Increase the donation size from the
Yes. That's a great one. Grow average gift size is the third lever. You can get new donors in, but if they stay at the same level of giving, you haven't actually grown the dollars. So one bucket, one lever you could pull is to increase the average gift size, either of first-time donors or repeat donors. And anyone want to guess what the middle lever is? Yes, I see Neva's hand up. Is that still up from earlier?
Yes, it must be. I'm sorry.
No worries. No apologies.
The facilitator would put it down. I'll go do it.
So the third bucket is to retain a higher percentage of donors. These are really the only three ways a nonprofit can grow revenue. And it's analogous to the for-profit business one. So you can get new donors in, whether they're individuals, companies, corporations, grants, whatever that is, a new supporter. Second, in the future years, you can convert a higher percentage of them to making a second gift, or have a higher percentage give a second, third, fourth gift in the same year. And then the last is to increase the average gift size of someone who's supporting you. Those are the only three ways you can grow revenue, and you can fit any mechanism, any type of engagement, any type of fundraising strategy somewhere within these three buckets. And some strategies span multiple buckets. Everyone agree now and clear on the three? From here on out, you're going to hear me mention recruit. That just means get new donors, retain, get a higher percentage of donors, or grow average gift size. And before I move on and start talking about, so what does this mean for our work together? I'd like to share that the best way to measure this is something called lifetime donor value. And so when we look at lifetime donor value, the formula, which I've put up on the screen, is very simple. It's the number of years in a donor's lifespan. That's number one. So the donor lifespan on average of a supporter, once they join you, how many years do they give? The second thing is you take donor lifespan and you multiply it by the second part here, which is the average donation amount per gift. That's that grow piece we talked about. You can move that up or down, but that essentially influences the donor's lifetime donor value. And then the third, you multiply those two times the frequency of donations in a 1-year period. Those three pieces comprise what we call lifetime donor value. And the simplest way to get the frequency of donations in a 1-year period is to take the total number of donations that an organization gets and divide that by the total number of donors, unique donors in that 1-year period. So you now can then look at whenever you bring a new donor in by applying this scientific formula and start making projections about what that means. So if you bring in a number of new donors and you know you're going to retain them on average 3 years, by increasing another year of their donor lifespan, you've now added to your lifetime donor value formula. Likewise, increase the average donation size, that adds to your lifetime donor value. Likewise, if you get someone to make a sustainer gift, a monthly donation, or they make 2 or more gifts in a year, you've increased the frequency of their donations. And that means you've increased lifetime donor value. Now, if you're asking where the recruit bucket is in here, it's kind of labeled within the donor lifespan. It's assumed that a first-year gift would be included in the average number of years a donor would give. So you have all 3 levers represented here in the formula. And so our challenge as fundraising professionals is to take this formula and put in strategies that allow us to maximize lifetime donor value by looking at these 3 mechanisms to grow total value by either increasing the number of years a person gives, increasing their average donation size, and or increasing the frequency of donations. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, that's as simple as I can make. I'm going to pause here and just ask, does anyone have any questions on either the 3 levers, recruiting, retaining, or growing donations, or donor lifetime donor value?
This is Martha Steele.
Yes, hello, Martha.
Yeah, one question. So it seems to me that I'm a little confused on the donor increasing the amount a donor might give versus increasing the frequency over the course of a year. I sort of think that the amount a donor gives is generally an amount that a donor may give in a year, whether it's once a year, 5 times a year, it doesn't much matter. So I sort of think there's some overlap there. That doesn't really seem to me to be 2 separate things.
They can be integrated. So for example, a monthly donation hits 2 areas. You're increasing the frequency of the donations and you're changing the average gift amount. Like let's say your one-time gift is $78. Most nonprofits, it's around $80, give or take $10 either way. You move someone to a sustainer donation, so a monthly donation, for example, you're lowering the average gift amount to around $20, but you're drastically changing the frequency of the donations. And so if they're making $12, $20 donations, your average gift amount is in the high 200s, closer to $300 a year versus somebody who's writing you a one-time check of $70. And so, you can put in strategies to either put a walk donor into a direct mail bucket, for example, or a direct mail person into another opportunity to support the mission. And that can change the frequency of donations. And so you look at a number of tactics underneath these, but at the end of the day, we have to align the work we're doing to hit one or all of these areas to really help unlock the full potential of a donor to the organization so that you can maximize their investment and mission. Does that make more sense, Martha?
Well, it makes some sense. My own sense is that most people have a figure in mind for a year, so they'll either give it once or they'll split it out into 12 installments. That's in general how my experience and people give.
Yeah, and I've tested this in a number of organizations, and what we find is that it's not so much set by their idea of what they want to support. A lot of times it's set by their income, which is about 12% of a person's net wealth, And the second is what the organization's actually asking them to do. And so, you know, we all have those instances where we're paying a subscription model where we pay $5 or $10 or $20 a month to something. And that's going to be far higher than if you went to me and asked me if I could just give you $50. I'd probably say yeah to the $50. But if you asked me to give you a $200 right now today to Netflix, I'd probably say no way in heck. But by Netflix charging me $12 or $15 a month, I'm suddenly in a position where I could write a $200 check over 12 months. That psychologically right now, I'm not ready to quite do if they were to ask me right now to write them a $200 check. Does that also help, Martha, a little bit?
That's fine. We don't have to continue this.
Yeah,
that's okay.
This is Davida from DC.
Yes.
I don't know if it's a question, it's more of a comment. So I understand conceptually what you're saying. And when it comes to, a lot of, for event donations, a lot of times it's all about the personal connection, in particular when it comes to things like the walk. So I don't know that, so if you're saying, okay, so one thing might be to take a donor and then convert them also to, or have them start receiving direct mail to grow their donations. These are people that we have personal connections with, and I would think that doing that in some cases could backfire on you. I don't know what your thoughts are. In other words, they've donated because they're my friend and they want to help. And if they start getting direct mail or another type of solicitation, I could lose that one. Could not, might not happen, as well as we could lose them as a donor to the walk.
Yes.
So there's got to be a fine line there. So how do you kind of make the judgment call as to when to cross it?
That's actually done by testing. And so right now we're talking conceptually. We're not to the point where I'm talking recommendations yet. I was just giving you an example, but in my experience, an individual who is engaged multi-channel, whether it's in the organizations I've worked with or in any of the studies that are out there, and I'm happy to share some of those, cross-channel donors who are engaged in multiple ways and participate in multiple ways have a lifetime value of anywhere from 5 to 10 times a person who's only engaged one way. Often how a person comes into our organization is either because of a friend or because of the cause. And your challenge is to raise the number of people up who want to support you because either they have a connection to your cause or they understand the work you do. And by doing that, you can increase their engagement. You would test the heck out of, do I send them mail and email and what works? And so the good news is the third-party groups who work on this and it's doing your mail and direct mail, they've already done all the testing with other groups. So then you do a small level of testing here. At the end of the day, though, we know cross-channel engagement improves lifetime donor value immensely. So for example, a person who shows up at a walk and then is willing to reach out to legislators on the Hill and advocate for you, I found at March of Dimes alone, that was a 7 times increase in lifetime donor value. Just by taking the extra step of inviting them to advocate and then having them take the step of advocating. It was a way to filter who was your strongest potential supporters and then engaging them in a way that allows them to give more.
So the advocating is kind of the test, and then that lets you know that you can go back and ask them, do an additional ask.
Yes, and that's why you have to design, very to your point, very smart engagements. It's not throw everyone into every channel. It's figure out what are the engagements that's going to lift a person's engagement with you and increase their motivation so that you can identify where you should be investing those resources cross-channel. Because to your point, a lot of people who show up at events, they don't have a connection to you, they have a connection to the team captain. How do you get through to those people who have an affinity? The good news is for most of the people outside of your events, they either are connected to your cause, either directly by experiencing challenges with sight, or they have a loved one or a personal connection to someone who does. And so you already have mechanisms in place to filter that out outside of the events. And so for those of you really quick who are in the event space, if you're wondering what that formula looks like for how you do the scientific evaluations of your event values, here's the one somebody mentioned earlier, the number of events. You can increase or decrease the number of events. That's the first formula. The second component, you multiply the number of events times the number of new plus returning participants. And by, again, increasing that up and down, that's your retention number, times the activation rate. These are the number of people who show up and then you activate them to fundraise. So that's getting new donors. And then the last is the average gift that those who are activated raise. So if you're asking, what does this mean, not for individuals, but for an event, this is your event formula. For those of you who would like to know that. And again, similar idea, identifying the levers that move these up or down so that you can maximize the total value of that event. And it gives you a way to then start to measure, is this event growing? Is the event shrinking? Is it being effective in what we're trying to accomplish? And so I'm just gonna pause here. Any thoughts or questions about event value before we now say, okay, why would we spend 15 minutes going over these two slides? Any other questions on either the event value or lifetime donor value?
This is Dan Day. Just a comment. It's one thing I'm seeing being involved in our Victory for Vision campaign. I think too often maybe we lose donors that we had in the past who were good supporters, but maybe through things like maybe the local chapter they were involved with kind of dwindled away and isn't as active any longer. Or, we just lost contact with them. So they haven't been asked for a while. They've been out of contact. And if we would just simply ask them or let them know what's going on, they would become donors again. So I think sort of it's in the general category of the care and feeding of donors, making sure that over time you maintain a connection with them. So it all ties in here, I'm sure, with everything we're talking about.
It does. And those win-back strategies or ongoing stewardship is a key component of maximizing lifetime donor value. If any of you have read Penelope Burke's research, she wrote the book of Donor-Centered Fundraising, the Bible on essentially lifetime donor value. She tells you the two-way to retain donors is to inform them of what your mission is and to thank them meaningfully, usually within 5 business days of their gift. Those two things alone, and I'm not saying the tax receipt. This is not, we sent you a tax receipt because you make a donation. It's a meaningful and intentional thank you. Those two stewardship activities alone lift lifetime donor value. And then to your point, layer in additional opportunities to engage, and you suddenly have a thoughtful approach to engaging people that does provide lift by either retaining people longer, improving their average gift size, or by having them then go out and attract more people to your cause.
DJ, Scott Bird
Yes.
here. May I chime
Scott.
in? Well, I had one comment, but now that you mentioned that comment, I'm going to add one. And that is, Lindsay, who you heard speak earlier, and I help host a golf tournament here in Colorado. This is our 22nd year. And based on I'm going to pile on to your comment there, DJ, about feeling appreciated. The number one thing that we would hear from our guests, and a lot of people that come and spend a lot of money at the golf tournament and the auction and everything else, have no connection to blindness, but they're coming to our event. But the number one thing that we have found to be the most valuable was to just gush appreciation to them. Every time they turn around, there was somebody with a big smile. Thank you for being here. It means so much to us. We hope you have a great day, and just kill them with kindness. So I really think that that's huge. Have a well-run event, everything, but just overflow the love and appreciation. And that keeps them coming back year after year because they feel it, which is great. Secondly, I'm not going to take issue, but I'm going to bring up here on what you're doing here. One is gross margin. Doesn't matter how big the check is, but if they write you $1,000 check, but it costs you $1,200 per person for that event, you're not doing very good. The foundation really prides itself on having a high gross margin, and Nathan or others could tell us the targets, but I believe it's over 70% gross margin is what we want. So if you get a $100 check, you don't want to be paying more than $30 for the dinner or the whatever it is you gave them. So gross margin is incredibly important. And then the other thing I'll say is all of us are volunteers. We only have so much time and so much energy. And there's a thing of efficiency. And you really got to question the event that you want to do. I love the walkathons because anybody can participate. Any check is almost 100% gross margin. And they don't even have to come and walk. We don't even care. It's just give us a check and sign up for a team. And it's just great. I'll tell you, a golf tournament, to use that since I know that well, is so much more difficult. You have a finite number, and you can't go over. You want to get to the maximum number. You have a cost for every one of them, plus other costs. And some events are just a lot harder to do. And like auctions, we do an auction. I see auctions, I'll just say it this way. I see about auctions at some events, and they get piddly little bids, and we don't make the best use of those auction items. And then, but if you take it to another event where it's deeper pockets, or there's just more energy and hype and enthusiasm for the auction, you can get double, triple, quadruple the dollars for every auction item. So anyway, I want to just emphasize gross margin matters.
Yes.
And if you have an event that just doesn't grow or doesn't have the revenue or the growth, do something else. Find something where when we put our energy into it, it's maximizing every minute of our volunteer time to put on that event. So thank you. Hopefully that is helpful. But
Scott, the point you're making is spot on. If you look at it from a 12-month window, gross margin is probably more important than many others. But what lifetime donor value also does is it forces us to look multi-year. So to your point, if you've got an event with a lot of people only showing up one time, that's their lifespan is 1 year. Likewise, if you've got an event that costs, to your point, like say it's $28 to drive the first $30 gift, on the books, you'd say that's a terrible investment. It only has a $2 margin. I'm going to get rid of it. However, if you looked at the lifetime donor value and it showed that that person then went on to make 5 additional $30 gifts without any additional cost to bring them in, that's $150 to over time versus $28 to get them in the door. I would take that every day. And so what lifetime donor value does is it kind of forces the view of what is the actual impact of this donor on that once we bring them in the door. Are they staying a long time? In which case it might make sense to have a very poor margin the first year if we lock them in versus maybe they're only going to show up once and it costs us a lot of money. In that case, we need to get rid of that. And so it allows you to then look at your expenses plus the actual footprint of once they're in the door and allows you to make a decision just like any business would when they're bringing on a new customer. It's the same idea here on the nonprofit side. And it does change a little bit the dynamic to your point of the time frame that you're looking at. And I think you're making a great point that margin matters in this. I'm only looking right here on the income side, but this allows you to then compare it to the cost to acquire and put those costs over the full lifetime donor value to make a more informed decision as to where invest those limited resources. Does that make more sense, Scott? Of why that's a key measure? And I agree with you completely. It's an important measure to look at. Okay. Before I move on, I'm just going to ask, are there any other questions that you all have around this? Okay, hearing none, what I would love to do now is to tell you a little bit about what's coming up next. If we, oh shoot, my screen, there we go. Our work together is going to focus on kind of multiple things. First, we're looking to how do we align goals and objectives to drive more revenue? And what's happened is the organization has grown incredibly over the last 50 years, especially in the last 10 years. You're now doing things that 20 years ago weren't in place. You not only have events, you've got mail, you've got digital, you've got social media, you've got Facebook, you've got a capital campaign work that just is wrapping up and has done amazing, driving $100 million into the organization. You've got a major gift effort that wasn't there. You now have a chapter network that wasn't there before. What's happened is that as those revenue streams have ramped up, sometimes the alignment is not there. And so either individuals aren't having the opportunity to fully, flex their love of the organization, or in some cases, processes may be working against retaining them or growing average gift size over time. And so some of the things we're going to be doing is to say, here's what's happening within the organization. Here's how we can align goals and objectives at all levels to essentially drive more revenue and put the right incentives and celebrations in place to reward those behaviors that are going to increase lifetime donor value or similar metric that's important. And that gets us to this next one, is that as a nature of a highly innovative and fast-growing organization, some barriers have probably popped up, either structural, cultural, or incentive-wise. So for example, are there artificial barriers such as in an event to say, well, I can't have this donor go over to a major gift portfolio? Because if they do, I'm going to lose their $10,000 donation here, even though they might make a $50,000 donation to the organization. That's a barrier. Likewise, if we move somebody out of mail where they're giving $80 a year and I get them into a individual giving or an event, I'm going to lose that $80 in the mail portfolio, even though they might recruit a team on the event side and drive $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. And so how do we identify and remove those barriers that may be disincentivizing you as leaders to drive more revenue and really operate in a very donor-centric way of what's the best interest of the donor to support the mission? And so that gets us to the next one, which is how do we reward that behavior and really celebrate it and give people the credit when they are able to move those forward? The next is, what are the technology requirements in the tech stack? You all are in the process of revitalizing your tech stack. That means that you have to think differently about how technology can enable this work, given where your current CRM is and getting where you want to go. And so we're making recommendations this month around technology requirements. And then it all boils down to this last bullet point on the screen. How do we move people through the organization in a way that encourages us to really put the right things in place to do this? Now, you all are already doing this work. Culturally, you're looking at and say, this is in the best interest of the donor. But if there's barriers or incentives that are needed, we want to put those in place and to accelerate that natural progression. And so if you're asking me, what are the next steps that are going to happen, is we are working with the senior leadership team there to not only develop those tech stack requirements, but also audit the systems. What's in the way, what's helping, what do we have to build on? And what are the actual processes that, and mapping those out of how donors are actually right now moving through the organization? And what do they need to be moving forward to support an integrated approach to donor engagement and stewardship? And so what we're going to be sharing at Visions is some of those high-level draft recommendations for you all and other participants to help us shape and provide feedback, and also help us think if we're missing anything in the process. And I'm just going to pause here. Any questions as to what those next steps are before I do my call to action of where we need your help today?
I have a question for you, DJ.
Yes, sir.
You know, we talk pretty much about sort of cash right here, right now, but or donations as a subscription. So, you know, I think when we talk about the lifetime of a donor, what about beyond? So let's talk about estate planning, right?
Awesome.
So let's talk about assigning beneficiary of your IRA and legacy donations. How do you approach those? Because, you know, if for people who would be assigning, say, a beneficiary of an IRA, if someone's already taking RMDs, if they're in that world, odds are they're going to have a substantial amount left in that IRA by the time they die.
Yes.
If they're in that world.
It's a great question. Yep.
How do you sort of bridge that? You know, especially estate planning is not necessarily something that everyone wants to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about when they die. But that's it'd be a more valuable discussion to have over the long term, but it's also a lot harder of a conversation.
So, Michael, you're hitting on one of the middle buckets here, the average donation amount per gift. I often say that plan giving is the ultimate evaluation of how effective you are in putting lifetime donor value processes in place. Because if somebody's putting you in a will, estate plan, IRA, they're putting in there like they love you like a family member, and their retention rate goes up, their average gift goes up while they're living. And when they pass, you're getting a huge bucket. So it changes the second number in here, the average donation amount per gift. And it's part of one of your tactics is to engage people who fit in certain portfolios or certain means or within certain attributes within your database to invite them to do this. And it becomes one of the strategies to lift lifetime donor value, especially knowing that a person who's giving you a cash gift is giving out of 12% of their assets, which is their income. 88% of an average American's net wealth. Before the pandemic, I haven't gotten the updated numbers. They haven't been released by the IRS yet, but 88% of a person's average net wealth is held in their assets, their home, their stock, their bonds, their retirement accounts, their insurance policies, their electrical tin openers, their CDs, their DVDs, their TVs, all of the things that they have that have value is where the real value, where wealth of Americans are. And so that increases the average donation amount per gift because the average plan gift is anywhere from 50 to 1,000 times a person's average annual gift. And so that becomes one of the strategies that you have to think about and integrate, not just by channel, but how do you make that discussion happen with who it needs to happen with across every channel? And so it's a great point you're making, and I completely agree that it's one of the pieces that need to be in your strategy mix. And so I'm just going to say we need your help. I only have 2 slides left. And if you're kind of saying, what help do you need, DJ? This is really it. I have 3 questions I'm going to be looking to get your feedback on right after this call. And my goal was to wrap up at 4:50 Eastern time so that you'd have 10 minutes to do this now if you'd like to. But I'm going to post a link in the chat that has a 3-question survey, as well as ask Bailey if she wouldn't mind sending the link out afterwards to everybody so that you all can give yourself a couple minutes to think about the answers to each one of those 3 questions and post them there. And for those of you who are wondering what those 3 questions are, the first questions are, what opportunities do you see for aligning processes, strategies, and metrics around supporters? And what should we be doing more of? In other words, what do we need to do regardless of channel to help provide more alignment of processes and increase average donation size as well as lifetime donor value? Second, what are the barriers you're seeing in coordinating the processes, the strategies, and the metrics to more effectively engage those supporters? Are there things in the way of thinking about how do we make that happen? We gave the example earlier about the disincentives of my portfolio going down if somebody gives in a different channel. Is that one? What else are you seeing that are barriers to us really maximizing an individual's support across the entire organization? And then the third question, if you could change one thing to improve donor centricity, which is just a fancy schmancy word of saying putting the donor first and figuring out where the best opportunities are to engage them regardless of where they sit, what would it be? What would be the one thing you would wave your wand and change, and why? Does that sound okay with everyone? And I am going to ask you if you could share your name in that survey. All answers are completely confidential for my eyes only. I at Turnkey am the only one who have access to the forms. I will never share names at all with the foundation. But what I will do is if you say something really intriguing, really interesting, and I need to get some more information, I would ask your permission to follow up with you afterwards and get 5 or 10 minutes of your time to explore that a little more and learn a little more so that I can get to the root of what you're saying if I'm not able to understand it as an outsider looking in. Does that sound okay with everybody? Okay. And for staff who may have limited sight, please feel free to capture your insights however you'd like and share that with me directly. For the chapter presidents or the staff who have limited sight, please send that to me directly, and I'll ask Bailey to include my contact information with that too, if that works for you, Bailey and Nathan, around that. And so I'm posting that in the chat right now. And that's really all I had for today, was to give you a chance to have that filled out today. And so any questions as I'm putting this in the chat?
From DJ Hampton through to everyone. From DJ Hampton through to everyone. DJ is on.
Any questions, or am I